Hi, my name's Paul Baines. I'm Professor of Political Marketing at the University of Leicester School of Business, and I'm here to talk to you about marketing. And my first topic is the nature of marketing. So let's begin by defining marketing. And I'll just give you a couple of definitions. The first definition is by the Chartered Institute of Marketing, who indicate that it's the management process responsible for identifying, anticipating and satisfying customer requirements profitably. The American Marketing Association has a slightly different definition, and I think this is interesting. They say that marketing is the activity, set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners and society at large. And I think the difference between that definition and the previous one is that the American definition recognises that marketing has a much wider societal set of implications, and that actually it's not just about satisfying customer requirements profitably, but also it can be used in a whole host of other contexts, including in social marketing aimed at changing people's behaviours or stopping people from doing certain things, and also in association with charities and so on. So that's the definition of marketing. But what do marketers actually do? Good question. Quite a lot. It turns out that their role is multifaceted. From a whole host of interviews, the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK determined that there are a bunch of different activities that they undertake. They are concerned principally with the organisation's reputation, and they measure the risk to that reputation, and that's not insubstantial. Reputational risk can kill companies if companies lose trust with their publics, particularly government and other important stakeholders. They're the principal group responsible for brand and ensuring that the brand maintains its value. There are some companies whose brand alone, if you purely sold the brand, are worth billions. An example would be Apple. Another example would be Microsoft. Another example perhaps would be in the UK, Burberry. Think of just the value of the brand alone, without any of the factories, without any of the materials, without any of the employees. Marketers are responsible for integrated marketing communications. Integrated marketing communications is marketing communications, but where all the different elements of the communications are running together so that the message is aligned. Because often enough, different agencies are looking after different components of the communication, so hence the integration is quite important. Marketers look after digital integration, ensuring that what's happening digitally in terms of communication, in terms of the delivery through channels, is aligned. They're also responsible for product management, ensuring that the product is the very best it can be for the customer's needs. Does it meet those needs properly? What are customers saying about the nature of how that product responds, or offering more generally if it's service based, is responding to their needs. Marketers are fundamentally responsible for monitoring and measuring their own effectiveness. Although they don't do this alone, they tend to do this with accountancy colleagues too. They're very responsible for customer experience, for partnership marketing, and ultimately they are buying in insight and market research from agencies and buying in a lot of that communications. And all this is done in association with other components of the company, like operations, finance, supply chain management and so on. So marketers don't operate alone, they have to work together with lots of other colleagues and integrate their activities accordingly. But marketing is principally about ensuring the demand side of the supply and demand function, really. So all markets operate on the basis of meeting demand by supplying something. So if you think about water, let's say a Saudi water company would be a good example, then of course Saudi Arabia's desert-like conditions, the need for water is very substantial, the need to keep hydrated is very substantial. Therefore a lot of water needs to be provided to people, especially if they're outside, and the result would be that that demand needs to be met. So how we manage supply and demand is fundamentally important. And of course, the price at which the price that you set has an impact on both what demand responds to that price, but also how much you can supply. And you've got to ensure that what you produce is sufficient to meet that demand. And the price at which the demand curve and the supply curve meet is the so-called market clearing price that achieves equilibrium between supply and demand. And, if that demand curve shifts to the right, that leads to a higher equilibrium price. That might happen when consumers' desires for a new brand increases. For example, if there's a new model. Think about a new PlayStation. When a new PlayStation arrives, a whole bunch of people will queue up for hours, or whether that's online or in retail shops. And so that will be a situation in which actually the price is able to increase. The producers of that PlayStation, Sony, can increase the price because the demand has increased as a consequence. And the same thing happens if demand drops. Let's say a new competing product comes out that's better. Well, then the demand for that other product that's less attractive drops, and consequently the price has to drop in order to keep to make it more attractive. And supply is similar. Perhaps producers can produce more efficiently. Perhaps there's a new process that they develop that allows them to produce more at a cheaper cost. In this situation, the supply curve would shift to the right, leading to a lower equilibrium price and a higher equilibrium quantity. And the opposite could occur too. There could be a decrease in supply, shifting the demand curve to the left, and the higher equilibrium price is the result in a lower equilibrium quantity. So factors affecting supply and demand. Well, factors affecting supply involve changes in the cost of production, as I mentioned, the introduction of new technology, perhaps indirect taxes, government subsidies. Government may be subsidising some certain things. Think about subsidies for car battery plants and electric car battery plants and so on, or what we call exogenous shocks. External shocks in the macro environment, things like war or changes in energy prices or COVID. These are all exogenous shocks. Factors affecting demand include changes in the prices of substitute products. A substitute product is a product that's very similar to your own, that meets customers' needs in the same way. And there are also complementary offers. Tea and coffee are two complementary things. If more tea is drunk, assuming that you've got the same number of people, then that means a decline in the consumption of coffee probably, and to some extent water and other things are complementary there too. Changes in consumer income affect demand. Fashions, tastes and preferences affect demand. Marketing communications affect demand because they stimulate it or potentially demarket it, but that's usually by accident. The nature of the change in the customer base has an impact, so-called demographics. External exogenous shocks can also affect demand. And seasonality. A lot of retailers do the majority of their business at Christmas. If you take Harrods, for example, the famous department store in Knightsbridge in London, then a high proportion of its sales occur over the Christmas period, between the end of September in particular to up to Christmas and including Christmas, and then they milk it with a whole series of January sales, and so they will sell a very large proportion of their products during that time. So markets are supplied through in order to meet demand, and that occurs through an exchange process. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of exchanges through which marketing can occur. And one argument is that marketing can occur wherever there's an exchange. And that exchange doesn't necessarily have to be a monetary exchange. It doesn't have to be, here's a product and you give me some money. It could be, in the case of a charity, for example, provision of services to those in need. And of course, funds and volunteering are the reciprocal offer. For a theatre, of course, it's money and the retail price for seats, and the offer is escapism, education and entertainment. So here it's worth thinking, what's the true benefit that the customer is seeking. And that shouldn't be described in terms of the product. It should be described in terms of the customer benefit. The police, think about it. The police keep the public order and they include protection from crime and terrorism. What do the public get back in such an exchange? Public funds and cooperation. And interestingly enough, if you think about the CSA It's Sorted campaign, which is a campaign on the London Underground, but also on train stations in general, the CSA It's Sorted campaign is a police campaign designed to encourage people to report suspicious activity. So the police are advertising that and effectively using marketing. Okay, so I hope, just give you one more example, which is a really commercial example of a manufacturer and their customer. The manufacturer, of course, is offering credit facilities, return facilities, distribution arrangements and other services. And what the customer gets back is money, is money, and that corresponds with the price for the offering. A manufacturer could also deal with a retailer directly, who then deals with a customer, and there it would be goods, credit facilities, return facilities, and then the price that they get back is the wholesale price for the goods.